Okay, so this is an oral history interview with Morgan Williams that aims to recall their time as a DJ at WXCI in the 1980s and 90s, as well as the effects WXCI had on surrounding communities. WXCI began in 1973 and is a student-run college radio station located in and broadcast from the Midtown campus of Western Connecticut State University, also known as WestConn, and is located in Danbury, Connecticut. WXCI is known for spinning a very wide variety of music styles, and back in the 80s and 90s, it served as a major catalyst for new music during a heyday of college radio before the internet, when mainstream radio was largely playing classic rock. Morgan was a DJ there from 1982 to 1987 and was an active participant. Hey, look at that, the bumper sticker. I think I still have mine somewhere. Or it's stuck to something. I think it's stuck to something. And was an active participant in the thriving alternative music scene in the Western Connecticut area. My name is Samantha Levin, and this interview is taking place on the afternoon of July 18th, 2022 over video call. While I'm the interviewer here and generally intend to let our interviewee speak about their experiences, I grew up in the WestConn area, and so we may reminisce a little bit here and there. So Morgan, let's go back to the very beginning. Where were you born and where did you grow up? Let's get some context going. Who are you?
I was born in beautiful Danbury Hospital, grew up in Bethel, Connecticut. And I had always wanted to be a DJ. I have a cousin who was a DJ at a radio station in New York City, so that's kind of where I had the bug for it. When I graduated high school, I walked over to Western Connecticut State University and found the radio station. They were just about to sign off the air. I told them that I knew how to spin records, back and forth, segue from one to the other, and they were like, "Oh, wow, cool. Do you have time to keep the station on the air?" And I said, "I'd love it." And that's how I started at WXCI.
And had you learned to spin from your cousin? Is that how that happened?
Yes.
Okay, that's cool. That's fun. What was that like? Do you remember any favorite moments?
I just was, a nervous kid in high school that wanted to be a DJ, and obviously God forbid what I sounded like. But I've always loved music. There was music at my house, a wide variety of music. So when I got to the radio station, at that time they were transitioning from jazz up your rock. From the 70s, they were real freeform college radio station. There's a lot of progressive rock and jazz. So they were moving from jazz up your rock to the new wave alternative music.
Okay.
So the summer of '82 was when I first heard Joe Jackson and first heard Talking Heads. For me personally, those bands have been out since the late 70s, but they were new to me.
Yeah.
So it was really cool to hear this music, and also get to play the music I love, Allman Brothers, just classic rock. Yes, I remember playing Yes at the station, and
right
and like that. So
cool.
it was great. And then so this is the thing, I hope I don't ramble too much. And
No, it's sometimes that's what you need to do.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So I hope I'm answering your question. I'll just keep going.
Yep.
So that was a time when the station was transitioning because this alternative music was becoming more and more popular.
Okay.
Daryl Ort became the program director.
Okay.
It was a huge influence on the programming of the radio station, bringing in all of that alternative new wave stuff.
Okay.
We were all on board with it. It was time for music to change, and there was plenty of new music that was coming out. and XCI was the perfect ground for this stuff to be played.
Was that because, do you think it was because you were college radio and didn't have like advertisers and that kind of thing? Or, okay, so you had more freedom.
Correct.
Cool, cool, cool.
And the best part about it is that we had a signal that was strong enough to reach into lower Fairfield County, skip over into Long Island at times.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah, it was like a perfect storm of creative people, creative music, and we had some technology that at that time, made it good for us.
For some reason, it didn't reach my house. Made me very mad. Right in New Milford. It was right there.
Yeah.
WXCI. I had to hear it when I was at friends' houses and stuff like that. So Daryl Ort brought in all this alternative music. Was he, tell me more about Daryl and your connection to him, your relationship with him.
So Daryl, I would say he was definitely the personality of the radio station. He was the person that had the first spiked mohawk and wore army boots and was a punk rocker.
Okay.
So yeah, he was the personality of the radio station. However, there were a number of people that were there before Daryl that were really so Daryl was the personality. I guess these other guys were, I guess you call them the nuts and bolts. They taught us radio. And that's what we were always proud of ourselves about at XCI, because we were fortunate to have great music to play, but we were also structured to teach how to be a broadcaster and how to operate at a radio station. The list is too long to go through. But a number of people worked at I-95. They got a lot of people their first jobs in radio.
Okay.
And really taught us how to program and how to attract listeners and gain listeners. We weren't rated officially in the Arbitron ratings, but we did have an impact on the Danbury market.
Cool. And I just want to give some context about I-95. Was that can you describe that a little bit?
You're in New Milford and you don't have context on I-95?
I know what it is, but you can probably describe it better. I'd probably stumble over it.
Yeah, I-95 is the home of rock and roll, the Stone House, the classic rock station. And through the 70s and it's still there. So yeah, I mean, we always had a love-hate relationship with I-95 because we knew that they were professional and they were a moneymaker, but we were young, obnoxious college kids, and we just had to give it to them whenever we could. Even though I worked there for a period of time, still had this conflicting attitude. But they get all the respect in the world. I will drop a name: Bruce Goldson, Buzz Knight. Those guys, they respected XCI. Bruce worked at XCI. He went from WestConn at XCI to I-95. So yeah, all due respect.
Right.
But they, we got so tired of REO Speedwagon and
I know. Stop. Were they like playing Creedence a lot as well? Like, all respect to Creedence, but so much. So were you going to school at not WXCI? Were you going to school at WestConn as well?
No, I was going to school at WXCI.
I mean, you were really.
Yeah, no, and there's a lot of the DJs had a hard time balancing class with the radio station. But yes, I went to WestConn.
Okay.
I was on the 5-year plan.
Yep, I know that.
Yeah. So yes, I was a WestConn student, and I somehow managed to graduate after 5 years. So
nice. Did it have any connection to communication and broadcasting and that kind of thing? Your major?
I was a communication major.
Okay.
But I, to this day, I'm ashamed that I did not grasp the academics of communication theory etc. I was headfirst into radio.
Yeah.
So classes were definitely secondary.
Yeah.
Um,
Sometimes that's how it goes.
yeah, I mean,
It's
I guess
fine.
it was the entire school helped my education and my career, so I'll give it that. Um, but when I look back now on some of the classes that were offered, you know, criticism of television shows and speeches and stuff like that, that just like I just cared about music.
Yeah. You don't blame you. Medium is the message, right?
Yeah.
um, so my next question is, what led you to take an interest in alternative music? We've already kind of discussed that, but let's talk about that. Let's like dig into that a little bit. What was going on at the time that made like define alternative music for me in that context? What did it mean to you at that time?
I think at that time it was easy to define it. I mean, there was nothing like Duran Duran.
Right.
There was nothing like Talk Talk.
Right.
Um, I'd have to see a list, but I think you get the idea.
Yeah.
The Cure.
So many.
And then, bands like Talking Heads, Elvis Costello, Joe Jackson, they were guitar oriented artists, but they just had a different slant to their music. It wasn't like the progressive Yes songs or,
Right.
like classic rock and roll. It was new alternative music.
Right. Right. And what would you say about all the labels that eventually turned up? Were you hearing any of the terms post-punk, punk, goth, like all of those things? Were you hearing any of that or using it yourself?
Not at that time. So when the station transitioned, we had a really hard time on campus because there were a lot of holdovers, for lack of a better term,
Okay.
of especially in the Danbury area, and I don't want to knock New Milford, but
Yeah.
that just were holding on to rock and roll,
Yeah.
and that was fine.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of turmoil on the campus, and we had a slogan that we went with new music for the new you, because the college turned into graduated to a university, got a university status.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Exactly what year, but they went from Western Connecticut State College to Western Connecticut State University.
Okay,
And
cool.
so we jumped on the phrase new music for the new you.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, to me, without thinking about this stuff too much, new music, alternative music was the real slogan, or what it was labeled.
Okay.
Alt rock wasn't. I think those terms developed. Goth, goth. It was probably out there. I mean, the word gothic has been around, but
Yeah.
yeah, I don't remember when I first, started to realize goth was a label of where some of these bands were coming from.
Right. Right.
So,
Or where they were slapped into eventually. Yeah, I can't remember what terms I was using back then either, because we were all kind of a big mixture of people, right?
right, yeah.
Tell me about what you were wearing at the time. Were you dressing up in any particular way?
That's so funny. I just could not be that cool. Kid from Bethel. I sent you a picture of myself and Kirk Michaels.
Yeah.
At City Limits, and I was the most uncool looking new wave DJ. I did have my army boots and I had my engineer boots, and I had some jackets with the collars.
Right. Oop.
I wasn't really into one with the spiked belts, or I didn't really look too new wave. I always went for the traditional. I guess the preppier I dressed, that was my style. So
Right. And just to add a little bit more context, this is when Pretty in Pink. No, this was after Pretty in Pink had come out and in those kinds of movies, Breakfast Club, that kind of thing. So that's what you're talking about with preppy dress, or
Well,
how do you?
so those, in those movies, there was a slant to how people that listen to alternative music dressed.
Right.
So I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, trench coats.
Right.
Oh my goodness, the biggest thing was to get just the right trench coat from Goodwill or Salvation Army. So
Yeah.
once you found the right trench coat, you were in. That was it.
So it's a more John, what's his name, with the boombox playing?
Oh yeah, John Cusack.
Yes. Right, there's my connection. All right, all right.
But yeah, I definitely, we saw the people that, the girls that dress like missing persons with a lot of makeup
Yeah.
on their eyes that would go out, or a hair, the hairstyle with all of it being pushed to one side.
Mhm.
Yeah, we saw everything.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
me personally, I was always more traditional.
Yeah. Cool.
But New England will do that to you.
It will. Damn New England. No, a lot of us were, I think. I didn't, I'm more goth now than I was back then, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, One thing that just came to mind was the influence of MTV at the time. How was that coming through your life? The music stuff as well as the visuals, but what they were spinning.
Yeah. I guess I don't know. MTV came on the scene. There was tons of music videos. I think they had their own challenges with the music that came out.
Mhm.
They didn't know what to do with it. So they created shows, but they also, I think they played a lot of, the bands. Well, I guess, like, let's say Duran Duran or Culture Club. I mean, that helped push MTV, way up to the forefront, things like that.
Yeah.
But then there were so many other bands, The Cure, Fishbone, that they had to set aside on programs like 120 Minutes.
Yep.
Things like that. So, I didn't have any problems with MTV that I remembered. I mean, when they stopped playing music over the past 10 years or something, or whatever.
Yeah, it was so sad.
Yeah, that's a whole nother story. But
Yeah.
in our time,
Yeah.
there.
Cool. So you also DJ'd at clubs in the Western Connecticut area, which was a big part of your DJing work. You did not, just to provide more context just about the oral history series that I'm doing, I'm interviewing a lot of people who went to the Images nightclub as teenagers. And so people who DJ'd there, you trained, Jeff McKay and Anarchy. I've never met, but will soon.
Good.
So, and they DJ'd at WXCI, but you DJ'd at a bunch of other clubs in the area. Can you talk about, give me a timeline and how that came about?
Yeah, I'm happy to tell that story, because I believe I was the DJ that started New Music Nights.
Yes.
There was a famous club out in Brewster called the Fore and Aft, and they had changed to more of a disco-oriented nightclub called Polo's for a period of time. And I went out there. This was the entrepreneurial spirit in me. So I went out there and told them we worked for the radio station and we wanted to do a new music night. And they let us. I DJ'd that, and we got to play. I got to play, in a nightclub with a huge sound system. All this new wave alternative music.
Mm-hmm.
It went from Polos. They stopped it at some point. I don't remember the time period, but
Okay.
And then I went to Promises on, I think it's on Route 7 there in Danbury, Brookfield line,
Mhm.
by the old drive-in movie theater.
Oh, wow.
And so they let us on Wednesday nights because, they had nothing better going on Wednesday, so they might as well let these college kids come in there. And
Right, right.
it was a long running night, so they were definitely making money off of it. I mean, not a lot, but it was a good Wednesday night for them, and I think they knew that.
Right, right.
So it went from Promises, they closed for a period of time and then reopened as City Limits. And I DJ'd Wednesday new music nights at City Limits.
Mhm.
It was a great time. I think that's what really started to foster the maybe the older people, over 21, and just it's where the older people could go to drink, at a nightclub and dance and see their friends, this camaraderie for that type of music.
Mhm.
Um,
Right, right.
it got coined geeks and freaks, people, because some of the regulars, so I think disco, just classic rock and disco were obviously still around.
Yeah.
And on the weekends, that's kind of that's the crowd that the club catered to.
Right,
White Capezio shoes and members only jackets and
right, right.
bag haircut or something. That's who they catered to.
Yeah.
But the guys would follow the girls, and on Wednesday night they would come to see the girls at City Limits, and
Right,
so
right.
other people would come in and they would tease a lot of us, but
Yeah.
it was our night and we were definitely there to have fun. So
Yeah.
um,
Do you have a general idea of the time frame? Like, even if you don't know the exact years, like 80 something to
yeah,
80 something.
so let's see, it must have been 84, 83 to 83, 84 to, for my time that I was there, probably up to like 86.
Okay.
And at some point, I know Anne found Images, and that was all ages.
Yeah.
So I personally didn't hang out at Images, but there was a huge all ages crowd.
Yeah.
That was there. And and it was a little more, I think it was a little more alternative than what I was playing at City Limits.
Right, right.
And that's just what happens.
Yeah. It probably had to do with the time as well, like what new things were coming out at that time and the changes in the music scene in general.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So at some point in I would say like the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, things started to change with the music scene. Alternative music, industrial music, Nine Inch Nails, that kind of thing started to become popular. And it had an effect on our scenes. How would you, that Jeff McKay mentioned, other people who went to Images have mentioned to me, and I experienced it as well. But what did you see from your standpoint?
I'd have to think a little bit more, but you definitely have touched on something. I think I remember playing Head Like a Hole.
Mhm.
I think CDs had just come out, so I might have been playing that on CD.
Mhm.
But yeah, there was, and because I know Jeff had a little bit more of Jeff and Ann had a little bit, a different style than me personally.
Mhm.
And I think, like you said, it had to do with the music that was coming out and how it was received.
Mhm.
And my memory is bad, and you kind of caught me off guard. I can't think of
Sorry.
what song they played that helped things lean that way.
Mm.
But yeah, it was really because the music was, it was growing, changing.
Mhm.
And I think I personally was getting older, So, you know, I had my favorites as an older person. And so I just, you know, kind of stuck with that, whereas this other stuff was coming out, and you know, there was clearly that audience that was there
Right.
for that.
Right.
Yeah, I wish I could think of more of the bands off the top of my head, but
As
yeah.
far as industrial music goes, there was Ministry and Front 242 and that kind of stuff.
Right, and Nitzer Ebb.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, like, so when I played Ministry, I played, let's see, so Work for Love, which was on the first album. You know, I would play that early in the night.
Yeah.
All Day and Every Day is Halloween were my staples
Mm-hmm.
at City Limits.
Yes.
I don't know, I'm sure Jeff and Ann played those at Images.
Yes.
But they probably played other later Ministry music, just Ministry as an example,
Yeah.
you know, than I did. They were, you know, because they had plenty of other songs after Every Day is Halloween.
Yeah.
But for me, at my age at the time, and the audience that I felt was at City Limits, Every Day is Halloween was good.
Yeah.
Boy, I wish I could. I wish I could talk more about particular artists like that, but I just.
You're not the only one. It's very common, and there's so many bands, so much music from back then and now that we're all, you know, listening to and whatnot. It's a lot to remember. I actually, in one of my pre-interviews, I advised someone, write down a list if you're worried.
Yeah.
Of people too, of people we knew back then, just
Yeah.
because it's been 30 years. It's been more than 30 years. It's a long time.
Yeah, it was. So for some reason, Fishbone, When Problems Arise, always pops into my head. Those are and Depeche Mode. You know, they had their earlier songs that I would play, whereas, you know, later in time they had other albums that came out that were, you know, fueled
Right.
the audience at Images.
Yeah.
One thing I do want to I'll name drop a little bit here
Please
is
do.
I was, you know, again, the spirit that I had in playing music and getting this music out into the Danbury area, because we were so close to New York.
Mhm.
And I was very influenced by the New York clubs and what the New York clubs were doing, and so I
Right.
wanted to try to get some of that stuff out there. But
Mhm.
at the end of the night, I would always let I don't know if you recall Egg the Poet or the Bunny Brains,
No.
where okay, it was a band. I hope they don't get me, but I don't know if they developed out of Trash American Style, but I know that Malcolm and his friends there, you know, they hung out at Trash American Style. Egg the Poet, I'd let him spin for about 20 minutes or a half hour at City Limits, just, you know, because I wanted local music and people that were into whatever music scene was happening at that time in Danbury, just to be involved. So it was always fun, and they went on to, you know, create a music scene in the Danbury area. After I had left, I must admit I wasn't there for a lot of that. But like I was saying, I'm proud to have spent time with those guys and have gone through Trash American Style. Both locations, I do remember when they were up at the Four Corners, and yeah, just being a part of that. I'm glad that I was a part of it,
Right.
and watched it grow. There is another archivist that I mentioned to you, Ben Gurrett, who's working
Yes.
on what's called Hat City Stories.
Right.
And yeah, he really goes into really the early 90s, and the music scene and the bands and the art scene that was happening in Danbury. at the time. So I guess that kind of segues into what had been thinking is that, yeah, I was there from the onset in the very early days, and I was a little bit older, and my life moved on.
Yeah.
And the music scene in Danbury grew immensely, and there were just so many bands and so much music and so much art that was going on. My friends Dan Bishop and Chris, oh, forget his name, who had the art gallery off of Main Street in Danbury, and how they began the Gasball Festival, which, just music, art, young people having fun. And it was so great that it was going on in our little town.
Yeah.
And I was, one of the episodes in the Hat City Stories talks about how the scene never really got over, never crossed the line and became something national, but it was definitely a regional scene. And I guess the important thing is that it was fun for everybody that spent some time.
Yeah. Did you ever, I think I know the answer to this, but did you ever have any connections with the hardcore scene? Did you see it happening around you?
Totally, to the max. My first introduction to hardcore, of course, was through Daryl. And he was, there was a couple of teenagers that were not enamored, it's not the right word. They just knew that Daryl was into hardcore. So
right.
They became friends. A band, the first band that comes to mind is Dave Ranelli's Violent Children.
Okay.
And a guy named Ray Capo, who is still performing hardcore today.
Okay.
And I think he's been international with his music. He has a band called Shelter. I hope I'm on track with this. I believe he preaches Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
Okay. So yes, Dave Ranelli, Violent Children, Ray Capo, and Youth of Today. A couple of those kids were always around the station, and they were nice kids. And I hung out with them. Hardcore wasn't my favorite music, so I didn't go to Anthrax. I don't think I had ever been to Anthrax. But I do remember the radio station, we put on some kind of event at the Candlewood roller rink. And I remember Dave Ranelli and Ray Capo being there, and roller skating. And they were, they were younger than me, and they were what I would say the really origins of the Connecticut hardcore scene.
Right.
Coming out of Danbury. And of course, so Daryl's show, The Adventure Jukebox, which featured hardcore music to begin with, was my introduction to that whole scene. And, although it wasn't my taste in music, I had friends that were involved in it. And so I've seen a lot of what was going on there.
Right.
And I'm still friends with Ray Capo on Facebook today.
Nice.
So it's funny how everybody grows, things change, but I guess it's nice to reminisce.
Yes, absolutely. You sent me a photograph that looks like it was sent to you by someone named Daniel Robert Walking Trail.
Danny Bishop.
Okay. All right. Making connections.
Yeah. That's his name on Facebook.
Okay. You want to tell me a little about that picture?
I will. So Dan Bishop, I got what is Chris's last name? I can't believe I'm so blanking right now because I've known the guy for 20 years. So Dan, I grew up with Dan Bishop. We're from the same. We lived down the street down the street from each other in Bethel. I've known him since I was 10 years old.
Mhm.
Um, and we've been friends ever since. And I don't know when we kind of lost touch, probably through our college years.
Right,
Uh,
right.
People go their separate ways. Like I said, I've known Danny since, and I call him Danny because that's, even though I'm sure, he goes by Dan or Daniel these days, but,
Right.
kids like that you know, you call them by that young name. And so I've known him since 10 years old. We probably lost contact when we were in our that college age.
Mhm.
And I don't remember when we circled back together, but I know that he was working at CD One Stop, which was a music catalog kind of place.
Yeah.
And that's when we kind of touched base about the gas ball that he was involved in producing. So yeah, I mean, I kind of regret not spending more time with him during that period, but I think I had just gotten married and moved out of the area. So, that's why I wasn't hanging out
Yeah.
so much. But I was like super proud that my friend Danny had done something like this. And it went on for a number of years.
Mhm.
And it was, yeah, I was just really happy that he was part of doing something like that.
Great.
So the picture is of Danny, a guy named Tom Bussman, who was a DJ at the radio station. Tom Bussman introduced me to snowboarding back in I don't know, 84 or 85. And just a quick story, there's a big hill. If you go the back way into Danbury, behind Rogers Park School, there's a road that goes from Danbury into Bethel. And if you're traveling from Danbury to Bethel, there's a huge hill on the right-hand side.
Okay.
I believe it's the rumor that I heard, or the urban legend that I heard, is that it used to be some kind of ski area called the Mad Hatter. And yeah, it was a trek to get up the hill, and then you'd get on these snowboards that were like the first version of snowboards, like
Right.
wood, and you'd slide down the hill, which took all of about 3 minutes, and
Right.
walk all the way back up the hill again. So that's Tom Buckman. He was in the center, and then it was myself on the end. And we're at a new music night that Jeff McKay puts together.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if you've seen him advertise or been, but every once in a while he'll find a space, thanks to Jill and the art center that she had. So we posed for a picture. The three were there, and I was surprised that Danny had mentioned that, like, when I was 10 years old, I said I was going to be a DJ. And he always remembered that. And
wow.
That's what his post was about, that went along with that picture.
Gotcha. I have not gone yet. He posted every once in a while, and to get up to Connecticut, it's not that hard, but it's hard, but it's not, but it is, it's one of those things.
I know.
So you mentioned moving away. You got married, you moved away. What's going on now? Where are you now?
Well, that was 28 years ago. Time flies.
Yep.
I'm separated.
Okay.
3 grown children. I still DJ parties and weddings. I've been doing it on the side ever since. In Danbury, my partner Kirk Michaels still has Sound Investment DJ service.
Okay.
He started it when we were at WestConn. We steal the equipment from the radio station and go DJ these. Oh my God, it was crazy. Like proms for Immaculate High School or New Milford High School. I used to drive up, I had a 63 Dodge van, and I used to drive up to Kent School by myself. DJ these dances for like 200 kids.
Wow.
So yeah, I've been road tested. And so yes, over 30 years later, I'm still DJing. Every time it slows down, I think I'm gonna stop. And the equipment just sits in the garage, and then all of a sudden I'll get an email or a phone call. Just working by word of mouth, and
Yeah.
I'll DJ a wedding, and then a couple of months later, somebody will say they were at that wedding and they're getting married.
Nice.
So yeah, I still DJ to this day.
Cool. That's really exciting. Do you ever come back up for, how far away are you? Where are you?
So I'm in Maryland, near Annapolis.
Yes. Okay.
And I used to go up much more often. And it's, see family, see friends. And it was great. But, after a while, the trip gets tiring, and you just don't go up as I don't go up as often as I used to.
Yeah. Do you have anything? Were you about to say something?
I was about to say something.
Say it. Bring it up.
Before I forget, I went to lunch or out to dinner with my friend Christy and Maura Ward, and it was so interesting how Christy was talking to me and asking me questions about my time at XCI. And she really gave me a different perspective. She gave me the perspective of a high school kid in the audience that listened to XCI and that, probably went to Images, and just how those high school emotions can really affect you, and you're falling in love for the first time or getting your heart broken for the first time. And there were songs by particular artists that just meant so much more to her and the audience than they did to us at the time. I mean, of course we loved our songs, and we loved the artist, whoever was playing it, and it meant it. I don't know if it meant as much to us because, when you're listening to it, you have 3.5 minutes to look for the next song to up, or, whatever's going on in the studio there. But I just thought it was so interesting to hear from her about the perspective of, this music, and, the songs by like the Style Council or Depeche Mode, and, I don't know who may have been curled up in a corner, crying to it. It definitely brought emotion to me. But I never thought about a high school kid that, would sit there recording songs off the radio and having it affect them so much. So I did want to bring that out. Especially to the audience at Images, because like I said, they were younger than me. And, I can only imagine, some of the things that some of those kids were going through. Probably not much different than, what I and my friends went through at that age. But since you mentioned Images being a topic of your work here, after I went out to dinner with them, I began to think about how younger kids, how much it meant, and how much the radio station meant to kids at that age.
Yeah. I mean, a big reason why I'm doing this series of interviews is because there are many of us who went to Images who Images was a sanctuary in a lot of ways. So, when you have back then in high school, there were these cliques that were happening a lot. And I'm sure there's still rejection in high school, but we were isolating ourselves from each other when we didn't get to understand each other. And so you had the freaks in the cafeteria corner, whatever, with the punks or not, and And Images wound up being a place to go to when you were getting rejected from everywhere else. And so, and I'm overgeneralizing it. Like, there were kids who were going there whose parents were drug addicts or alcoholics. There were, you know, all the variations of that, kids who just didn't fit in, kids who were just basically different. You know, you had your ADHD, your autism, your mental issues and that kind of thing. Images was just where you went to be yourself. And I may have mentioned to you that there were, you know, people who were just discovering their sexuality and their gender, and they were allowed to, or able to, they were able to, guys showed up in skirts all the time and dresses, and yeah.
And we're going down a road that perhaps another time in your work here, you can find people that can discuss it more. But yeah, generally, I saw that. And again, I was older.
Yeah.
So I was just kind of like, these kids, those kids. But you know, I had no judgment or anything on them. It's just that they were younger than me.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's just a different crew. Yeah.
And then sometimes when I think too much about this stuff, I do have to remember that, you know, things like this happened through the 60s and the 70s. Ours was in the 80s.
Yeah.
So, you know, it would really take more people like you to dig out and section, or, you know, put those groups and study those groups individually. I'm sure there's plenty of work done on it already, but anyway, that was our time, right? So
yes.
We'll leave it at that.
And thank you for training Anarchy and Jeff McKay to spin records, to and, you know, help make Images what it wound up being.
I love them both, and I'm proud to know them.
Thank you.
Proud to know both of them.
What's that?
I'm really proud to know both of them. I'm glad I was. I don't know if they want to admit it, but I'm glad I was a part of their lives.
Yeah. I'm sure they would. Is there anything else you want to mention?
Not at the moment. If something strikes me, I'll reach back out.
Okay. Definitely.
Or if you have any other questions for me, I'm happy to talk.
Not right.
Thanks for calling me. I'm happy. I'm here. Flattered.
I'm very excited to have had the opportunity to interview you for this.
Thank you so much, Samantha.
Okay.
Great night.